Captain Hayes stood in the command center of the colony on 442B and watched the monitors showing the barren landscape outside. The twin suns cast long shadows across the rocky terrain. 3 generations of humans had lived on this world, and it had taught them to survive anything. The colony was small but strong. Every person knew how to fight, how to think fast, and how to make impossible choices. The radio crackled suddenly. Everyone in the command center looked up, moved closer to the speaker. The message was broken and full of static, but the meaning was clear. The Galactic Council's trade station orbiting near their world was under attack. Ships were dying. Weapons fire filled the background of the transmission. Someone was calling for help, and they were calling for humanity. Dr. George Wright pushed his glasses up on his nose. He was the colony's chief scientist and had lived on 442B for 20 years. He knew the risks of space travel and combat better than anyone. His voice was steady but serious. "The Empire," he said quietly. "I knew this day would come. They've been attacking across the entire sector for months. The Council should have prepared, but they never believed in military strength. They believed in negotiation, the do not negotiate." Closed her eyes for a moment. She had read about the few data files the colony received. They were technologically superior to humans in almost every way. Their ships were larger, faster, and stronger. Their weapons could destroy entire stations in hours. Humans had only 12 small warships, old vessels that had been modified and rebuilt many times. They were no match for what they could throw at them. Lieutenant Cole stood up from his station. He was a young man with sharp eyes and a calm manner. He had been born on 442B and had never left the planet. He knew fighting, though, from the constant battle against the harsh environment. "Captain, we cannot send our ships," said. "It is suicide. We would lose everything, and the colony would have no defense left." Understood his concern. She felt it too. The colony was her responsibility. These people depended on her to keep them safe. But she also heard the panic in that distress call. Someone was dying right now. Children might be on that station. The Galactic Council had never helped humanity much, but that did not mean humans should let them die. "Contact the fleet commanders," said. "I want every ship ready to launch in 30 minutes. Shook his head. "Captain, you're sending them to die." "No," said, and her voice was hard. "I am sending them to do what humans do. We help people who call for help. We stand against the darkness. They think we are nothing. They think we are primitive children. Maybe they are right, but we are going to show them what primitive children can do." The communication room burst into activity. Messages went out to the 12 ships stationed around the colony. Their commanders received the order and began their launch sequences. Some of them questioned it. Some of them accepted it without question. That was the way of humans who lived on you did what needed to be done, and you did not waste time with fear. Dr. Wright walked over too. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are right," he said. "We have survived 442B. We have adapted to its gravity, its radiation, its deadly weather. They have never had to adapt to anything. Comfort and technology have made them lazy in their minds. We will surprise them." The 12 ships lifted off from the colony in a tight formation. They were small compared to the massive vessels, but they moved with precision. The pilots had trained together for years. They knew each other's moves and thoughts. They had practiced combat maneuvers in the harsh atmosphere of 442B, where one mistake meant death. They were ready. As the ships accelerated toward the trade station, thought about the people she was sending into battle. Officer Aaron Cooper was one of the youngest pilots. He had energy and skill beyond his years. Chief Engineer Hall had volunteered to lead the medical team on the flagship, knowing she might need to perform surgeries in the middle of combat. Commander Price stood beside in the command center, his hands moving across the tactical displays with calm focus. "Distance to the station," ordered. 2 hours at maximum speed," responded. "The attack is still ongoing. I am picking up multiple explosions. They are using heavy weapons against the station's shields. They are trying to crack it like an egg." Nodded. 2 hours. They would arrive in time to make a difference or in time to watch the station die. There was nothing in between. She thought about this choice. She thought about the families in the colony who would lose their protection. She thought about the people on that station who had no one else to save them. She did not think about turning back. The ships pushed forward through the darkness of space. The colony fell behind them, a small dot of light and life on the edge of human civilization. Ahead, the trade station was a bright beacon of violence and destruction. The ships surrounded it like wolves around wounded prey. opened the communication channel to all her ships. "This is Captain Hayes," she said. "We are going in, move fast, move smart. We are going to show them that the humans of 442B are not something to ignore. We are going to show them what it teaches you." The ships accelerated further. The first human warship opened fire on a destroyer from an angle the larger ship did not expect. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and no one on either side knew that this moment would change everything. The human ships came in fast and low, diving through the debris field around the trade station. Captain Hayes watched through the main viewport as the first destroyer moved to intercept them. It was massive, 3 times the size of the human flagship, with weapons systems that should have destroyed an entire squadron in seconds. Commander Price did not hesitate. "Hard turn to port," he commanded. "All pilots follow my mark." The 12 human ships twisted through space in perfect synchronization. The destroyer fired, and the laser beams cut through empty space where the human ships had been a moment before. This was how humans fought. When you grew up on 442B, where weather could kill you in minutes and the ground itself was poisonous, you learned to move fast and stay unpredictable. One of the human ships, piloted by Officer Aaron Cooper, accelerated toward a fighter formation. His small vessel was fast, more maneuverable than the larger ships. He cut between them, firing as he went. His rounds hit the shields of a heavy fighter, and the pilot had to break formation to avoid his counterattack. For the first time in this war, a fighter was on the defensive. Inside the trade station, Ambassador Vex watched through the reinforced viewport. He was a diplomat, a species that had relied on negotiation and peaceful trade for thousands of years. He had never believed in warfare. He had always said that violence was the tool of primitive species. Now he watched as humans came from nowhere and turned the tide of battle through nothing but courage and tactics. "What are they doing?" Vex asked the station commander, an official named. "I do not know," responded. "But they are buying us time. They are confused. They expected us to be destroyed by now." In space, the battle raged on. Human pilots executed moves that the commanders did not understand. They flew through asteroid fields at speeds that should have caused collisions. They used gravity wells from nearby planets to slingshot around formations. They sacrificed accuracy for speed, firing at enemies with weapon systems that were inferior to technology but used with intelligence and precision. One commander, an officer named Vex would later learn was called, finally understood what was happening. These humans were not fighting with strength. They were fighting with their minds. They were exploiting weaknesses in tactics that no other species had ever noticed. They had fought the same way for hundreds of years because they had always won. They had never needed to change. A human ship took a direct hit from a beam weapon. The vessel lost power momentarily, and the pilot, a woman named Tors, felt her ship drop like a stone toward the planet below. But she did not panic. She fired her manual thrusters in a pattern that no one would have predicted, spinning her ship sideways and pulling up at the last moment. The impact killed her shields, but she was alive and still fighting. Hayes watched her ships move across the battle displays and felt something unexpected: pride. These were her people, trained on a world that showed no mercy. They were outmatched and they were winning. "Status report," she commanded. Price's eyes were hard and focused. 3 ships damaged, 1 critical, all pilots still operational. We have taken out 4 fighters and disabled 2 heavy destroyers. They are pulling back. "They are afraid," Dr. Wright said. He was standing behind, watching the battle unfold. "Not of us as individuals, but of the unknown. We are doing things they did not predict. Their confidence is cracking." As the fleet began to pull back from the trade station, forming a defensive perimeter instead of pressing their attack, Ambassador Vex made a decision. He moved to the communication center and opened a channel to the human flagship. "This is Ambassador Vex of the people," he said, his voice steady. "I represent the Galactic Council. I am requesting permission to speak with your commander." Took the communication herself. "This is Captain Hayes of the human colony 442B. What do you want, Ambassador?" "I want to know how you did this," Vex said. "I want to know what makes you different, and I want to ask if you would be willing to help us save the galaxy from the threat." Looked at Price. She looked at Dr. Wright. She looked at the battle displays showing that the human fleet had done the impossible. She had lost 2 ships, but she had saved the trade station. More than that, she had shown the galaxy something it did not know. Humans were not primitive. Humans were dangerous. "Send a boarding team," said. "Let us talk face to face. Let us show you what the humans of the conference hall of the trade station was large and cold. Representatives from 7 different species sat around a long table. They were scared. Hayes could see it in the way they moved, the way they looked at each other. They had been winning. Now they had stopped winning, and everyone in this room knew that something had changed. Ambassador Vex stood beside as she walked into the room. The diplomat had already told them what he had seen in the battle. Now was going to explain why it mattered. "They are strong," began. She spoke in simple words, making sure every species in the room could follow her. "They have better ships, they have better weapons, they have better training, but they made one mistake. They believed that better technology meant victory. They believed that their ships could not be beaten." A representative named Counselor spoke up. "Your ships did defeat theirs." "No," Dr. George Wright said. He stepped forward with a data tablet showing battle records. "We did not defeat their ships. We defeated their commanders. We moved in ways they did not expect. We used their own formations against them. We turned their strength into weakness." Chief Engineer Hall was standing at the back of the room. She had volunteered to explain the medical aspect of human advantage. She had seen the damage done to human pilots in combat. She had watched them recover from injuries that should have left them unconscious. "Humans come from a harsh world," said. "Our planet tries to kill us in many ways. High gravity, radiation, toxic atmosphere. Our bodies adapted to survive this. When we are stressed, our hearts work faster. Our minds become sharper. Our pain tolerance is higher. We can fight and make decisions when other species would be helpless." Counselor, a small official with 4 arms and intelligent eyes, shook his head. "This does not explain everything. Many species have adapted to harsh worlds. There is something else you are not telling us." Smiled, this was smart. She decided to be honest. "The difference is philosophy," she said. "We do not fight just to win. We do not fight to prove we are strong. We fight because people we do not know asked for help. On 442B, survival means helping others. It means working together. It means making the hard choice, not the easy one." "What hard choice?" asked. "To leave our colony undefended," Price said. He was standing with his tactical officer's mind understanding the weight of strategy. "When you sent the distress call, we had 12 ships. Those ships were our entire military force. We left our families, our homes, and our colony defenseless to help you, a species that had never helped us. That is a hard choice. They would never make such a choice. They believe in advantage. We believe in responsibility." The room fell silent. Vex watched the alien representatives process this information. In his thousands of years of existence, he had never met a species that thought this way. Humans came from a single, harsh world. They had traveled to space only recently, yet they understood something that older, more advanced species had forgotten. Dr. Wright opened his tablet again. "We have a proposal," he said, "that can be beaten, but not by any single species, not by superior technology. They can be beaten by superior thinking. We want to teach the other species of the Galactic Council what we know about tactics, strategy, and adaptation. We want to help you understand your enemy and how to defeat them." Hall added, "We also want to help you understand your own strength. Every species in this room has abilities that they do not expect. We just need to learn how to use them together." Counselor leaned forward. His 4 arms moved in a gesture that indicated deep thought. "You are saying you will help us fight the... Why would you do this? Your colony is small. Your resources are limited. You gain nothing from this war." Met his eyes directly. "We gain a galaxy where justice matters. We gain partners and allies. We gain the knowledge that we did what was right. That is what humans gain from helping. It is more valuable than resources." Vex spoke for the first time since they entered the room. "I have watched many species come and go in the Galactic Council," they said. "I have seen advanced civilizations and ancient powers, but I have never seen a species choose sacrifice over safety the way humans do. If we are wise, we will listen to them. If we are foolish, we will ignore them and we will lose this war." The meeting continued for hours. Questions were asked and answered. Doubts were raised and addressed. By the end, a decision was made. The Galactic Council would accept humanity as full partners in the fight against the Empire. The humans would teach their knowledge to the Council's The next 3 weeks were the most intense of life. The trade station had become a military academy, and humans were teaching the galaxy how to fight. In a large training room, human soldiers showed warriors how to move through tight spaces with maximum efficiency. In another area, Price stood in front of holographic projections of ships, explaining their weaknesses to commanders of 5 different species. "Here," said, pointing to the rear section of a destroyer. The power conduits run through this area. They are shielded, but the shielding is designed to protect against external weapons fire. If you attack from inside from a boarding party, you can damage these systems. The ship loses main power for up to 5 minutes. 5 minutes is enough time to escape or to attack with precision. A commander named watched carefully. He had seen what humans could do in combat. Now he was beginning to understand why. Dr. George Wright worked with scientists from multiple species in the station's laboratory. They studied the biological systems, looking for vulnerabilities. Hall examined captured weapons, learning how they worked and how to defend against them. "They are strong," said to her team of medical specialists, "but they are not as flexible as humans. Their nervous systems work at a set speed. Ours can shift and adapt. If we can create a frequency of electromagnetic pulses that interferes with their nervous system function, we can temporarily disable their soldiers without permanent damage." It was the kind of solution that only came from humans who had survived 442B. Not the most powerful answer, but the one. In space, Tors trained pilots in human combat maneuvers. The species was naturally faster than humans, but they lacked the intuitive understanding of three-dimensional space that humans had developed. Taught them that speed without direction was useless. Direction without speed was slow. Together, they made something stronger. "Feel the gravity well," she told them, pointing to a small planet below. "Do not fight it, use it. Your ships are fast, my ship is tough. Together we combine advantages. This is how you beat an enemy with better weapons." Aaron Cooper, the young pilot who had pulled off the impossible rescue during the first battle, found himself becoming a symbol for the Allied forces. Other species watched him fly and tried to understand his decision-making process. How did he know where to move next? How did he predict what enemies would do? "I do not know," Aaron said honestly. "On 442B, if you guess wrong, you die, so you learn to guess right. You learn to feel what is happening, not just see it. You become one with your ship the way other animals become one with the land they live on." 3 weeks of preparation. 3 weeks of humans teaching and other species learning. The Galactic Council assembled its fleet. Ships from 7 different species were integrated into a unified command structure. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, multiple species fought under a common strategy designed by humans. Sat in the command center with Price and Dr. Wright. Maps of the territory covered every wall. Supply lines were marked. Military positions were calculated. The plan was simple but bold. Instead of defending the trade station or the isolated outposts of the Galactic Council, they would go on the offensive. "We attack their home system," said. "We attack where they feel safe. We hit their main defense station, which they believe is impenetrable. We destroy their command center. We make them afraid the way they have made everyone else afraid." Counselor entered the room. He had become one of his closest advisors. He understood human thinking in a way that other species were only beginning to grasp. "Your people call this a suicide mission," said. It was not a question. "Yes," agreed. "Many of us will not come back, but they will lose their ability to wage war. The galaxy will be free. That is a fair trade." Vex sent a message from the Galactic Council's main headquarters. The ambassador had become an advocate for human philosophy throughout the council. His message was simple. The humans are right. We support this plan completely. The fleet began to assemble. Ship after ship arrived at the designated launching point. 12 human vessels, 20 warships, 15 fighters, 10 speed interceptors, 7 heavy cruisers, and several hundred small support vessels from dozens of smaller species who had decided to stand with humanity and the Galactic Council. In total, more than 70 ships prepared for the assault on the home system. It was not a large fleet compared to the military strength, but it was a unified fleet. It had been trained by humans and inspired by human courage. Hall made sure every medical center on every ship was prepared for casualties. She knew that many would not survive. She also knew that the people she had trained would fight with everything they had. As the fleet prepared for launch, met with her senior commanders one final time. They sat in a small room on the trade station looking at each other. These were the people who would lead the assault. These were the people who would make the impossible decisions. "You do not have to do this," said to each of them. "Any of you can walk away now and no one will judge you." None of them walked away. "Then we move tomorrow," said. "We move toward the home system. We move toward victory or toward the home system appeared on the sensors like a dark cloud on the horizon." The Allied fleet approached carefully, their ships moving in formation like a living organism. Hundreds of lights moved through the darkness of space, representing the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. "All ships report ready," Commander Price said. His voice was calm but could see the tension in his shoulders. The defense station appeared first. It was massive, a structure built into an asteroid and reinforced with heavy armor. Weapons systems covered every angle. Under normal circumstances, a fleet like the Allied force would not survive an encounter with such defenses for more than a few minutes. But these were not normal circumstances. These were humans and the species they had trained. "Launch Phase 1, commanded." The ships broke formation and accelerated toward the defense station. They were not the fastest ships in the fleet, but they were strong. They fired their weapons, and the shields lit up with energy as they blocked the attack. The returned fire, and the first ship exploded in a sphere of brilliant light. Felt nothing except determination. This was what they had trained for. This was what everyone had volunteered for. "Phase 2, she said. The speed interceptors cut through the gap created by the assault. They were so fast that targeting systems could barely track them. Several interceptors were destroyed, but their weapons' fire hit the station's secondary power generators. The shields flickered. "Phase 3 said. The human ships moved in, 12 vessels against the most advanced defense station in the military. The pilots had trained for this exact scenario 100 times. Tors led the assault, her ship diving through a wall of laser fire that should have vaporized her in an instant. She made the impossible turn that human pilots had perfected and fired a precision salvo at the station's main reactor housing. Behind her, Aaron Cooper guided in a missile that had been designed by human engineers and scientists working together. The missile fit through a gap in the station's defenses that no other species would have thought to attack. The explosion that followed shook the entire system. The defense station's shields collapsed. "They are launching capital ships," reported. 3 heavy cruisers and multiple destroyer escorts. These were ships that could match the entire Allied fleet in firepower. These were ships that they had never needed to use in anger because their defense station had always been sufficient. But the defense station was damaged, and now the ships had to come out. "All forces converge on the heavy cruisers," commanded. "Move fast, move smart, do not give them time to coordinate." What happened next was not a battle. It was a dance between hunters and prey. The heavy cruisers were larger and more heavily armed, but they moved like rocks in water. The Allied ships moved like fish, circling and striking from unexpected angles. Hall watched from the medical center as injuries came in. Pilots with burns, crew members in shock, soldiers who had been in zero-gravity combat and walked away from damage that should have been fatal. She treated them quickly and efficiently, letting many return to their stations to keep fighting. In the command center of the flagship, watched the battle unfold exactly as she had hoped it would unfold. They were reacting instead of acting. They were following patterns that had worked in the past. They were losing. One of the heavy cruisers took a direct hit to its main reactor. The ship's power systems went dark, and it began to fall toward the planet below. Instead of watching it crash, made the decision that would change everything. "Send in a boarding team," she said. "Take that ship intact. I want to know what they know. I want access to their command systems." Price looked at her like she was insane. "That is a crippled enemy ship in the middle of a war zone." "That is exactly why we take it," said. "Move fast, but move smart." A team of human soldiers and scientists launched from the human flagship. They approached the disabled cruiser with weapons ready but minds focused. They knew what they were looking for. They had studied ship layouts. They knew where the command center was located. Inside the cruiser, confusion and darkness surrounded the crew. Their systems were failing. Their ship was dead in the water. The team of human soldiers moved through the darkness like predators in their native environment, hitting what light switches remained and using thermal imaging to see what could not. They reached the command center in minutes. The commander, a creature named Vortex with 4 arms and intelligent eyes, looked at them with something that might have been respect. "You are the," Vortex said in accented but clear colonial English. He had learned the language from studying human broadcasts. "We made a mistake underestimating you." The human team leader, Sergeant, did not hesitate. He disarmed the commander and secured the command center. Within minutes, human scientists were accessing the ship's computer systems and downloading everything they could find. Battle plans, supply lines, weaknesses in the defensive grid. In the battle above, the knowledge that the human team sent back changed everything. The Allied forces now knew exactly where every ship in the system was located. They knew what orders the commanders were about to give. They knew how to counter every move before it was made. The tide of battle shifted completely. The second heavy cruiser fell within minutes. The third tried to run, but Aaron Cooper piloted his human fighter in pursuit, and his weapons found the target. The destroyers tried to regroup, but they had lost leadership and coordination. One by one, they were disabled or destroyed. As the last capital ship stopped firing and began broadcasting a surrender signal, allowed herself to breathe. The turning point had been reached. The military was no longer a unified force. The galaxy had a chance. The Galactic Council's main hall was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some had fought in the war, some had provided support, some had simply watched and learned. Now they were here to recognize what humans had done and what it meant for the galaxy's future. Captain Hayes stood at the podium. She was tired. Her uniform was old and worn from weeks of combat operations. Her face showed the strain of every decision she had made, but her eyes were clear. "We did not win this war because we were stronger," said. She looked out at the gathered species, with their elegant forms, with their quick minds, with their steady power, and many others. "We won because we learned to work together. We won because we were willing to teach and willing to learn." Counselor stood up. "The Galactic Council officially recognizes humanity as a full member species with complete rights and responsibilities. We recognize the human colony of 442B as a sovereign world. We recognize Captain Hayes as a hero of the galaxy." The applause that followed was not the quiet, measured sound of a diplomatic function. It was genuine, loud, and emotional. Species from 100 different worlds clapping, cheering, or making the sounds of approval that their biology allowed. Dr. George Wright was asked to establish an academy on the trade station. Young humans from the colony would come to teach military science, strategy, and the philosophy of human warfare to students of every species. The humans had something to teach that could not be learned from books or simulations. They had learned survival in the classroom imaginable. Hall was asked to lead a commission studying how different species could work together in medical emergencies. She had treated injuries and illnesses from 100 different forms of life. She understood what united species more than what divided them. Health and healing were universal needs. Price was promoted to admiral and given command of the Galactic Defense Fleet. It was the highest military position any human had ever held. When asked if he felt ready for the responsibility, simply said, "I was born on a. I have been preparing for this my entire life." Aaron Cooper, the young pilot who had executed the impossible rescue, was invited to train the next generation of combat pilots. He was only 24 years old, but he had already changed the course of history twice. His quiet smile and honest manner made him a favorite among species of every kind. Ambassador Vex gave a speech to the full council. "I have spent thousands of years in diplomacy," the diplomat said. "I have believed that negotiation and cooperation were the only paths to peace. But I was wrong about one thing. Peace without the strength to defend it is just waiting for defeat. Humans understand that true peace comes from the combination of strength and compassion. That is what makes them unique." The commander, Vortex, was held for trial. Instead of execution, which was what some species demanded, the humans advocated for justice that allowed for redemption. Vortex was shocked by this choice. He had expected death. Instead, he was given the opportunity to learn why his species had failed. In a small room, sat across from Vortex and talked with him for hours. She explained what made humans dangerous, but she also explained what made them different. She told him about life on 442B. She told him about families who worked together to survive. She told him about the choice to help the trade station instead of protecting the colony. "You are strange," Vortex said finally. "Your kind should not have survived your world. Your kind should not have defeated my people. Yet here you are, and you are kind enough to talk to me like I am not your enemy anymore." "You are not our enemy," said. "You are someone who learned the wrong lessons. The galaxy has changed. You have the choice to learn the right lessons or to remain what you have been. That is your decision, not mine." As the months passed, the galaxy began to reorganize itself. The Empire still existed, but it was smaller and weaker. Its leaders were in chains, waiting for trial, But life went on. Trade began to flow again. Species that had been enemies during the war began to work together in peace. On 442b, the colony received news of what had happened. They celebrated quietly. Humans on a harsh world had gone out into space and changed the entire galaxy. Their sacrifice and their courage had meant something. It would continue to mean something for generations to come. Walked through the colony one day, and children ran up to her. They asked questions about space and about the aliens and about the ships. She answered every question honestly. She told them that it was not easy, but it was necessary. She told them that being human meant helping others, even when the cost was high. That night stood on a high peak of 442b and looked up at the stars. She thought about the distress call that had changed everything. She thought about the 12 ships that had launched with no idea if they would come back. She thought about the species of the galaxy who had learned that humans were not primitive children, but partners and teachers. The galaxy had changed because one captain decided that some things were worth dying for. The humans of 442b had shown the galaxy what courage really meant, and that meant that the future would be different. The future would be better. The future would be led by species that understood that true strength came from the combination of power and compassion. The twin suns of 442b set below the horizon, and the stars shone brighter. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. The SOS that changed everything had brought not just survival, but hope, and that hope would light the way forward for every species that called the galaxy home. Either way, we move with honor. That night, the soldiers and pilots of the Allied fleet wrote messages to their families. They recorded videos to be played if they did not survive. They cleaned their weapons and checked their ships one final time. On the morning of the assault, the greatest fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Council began to move. Forces, more importantly, the galaxy would finally understand that intelligence and heart were stronger than power and technology. As walked back to her ship with En, she thought about what came next. The hard work was beginning. The real battle was ahead. But for the first time, she felt that humanity had a chance, not because they were strong, but because they understood what strength truly meant. Lur 442b believe.